The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone path leading to Westminster Abbey as Kate Middleton sat in the vintage Rolls-Royce, her hands trembling slightly beneath the delicate lace of her wedding dress. Through the tinted windows, she could see thousands of people lining the streets, their faces pressed against barriers, cameras flashing like lightning in the early April air. This was not just any wedding day. This was the day that would transform a commoner's daughter into future royalty. Kate's journey to this moment had been anything but ordinary. Born Catherine Elizabeth Middleton in Reading, she grew up in a middle-class family that valued hard work and determination. Her parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, had built their party supply business from the ground up, teaching their children that success came through perseverance rather than privilege. Kate's childhood was filled with family holidays, school, sports, and the normal challenges that every teenager faces. The transformation began during her university years at St. Andrews in Scotland, where she studied art history. It was there, in the ancient halls of learning, that she first encountered Prince William. Their meeting was not the fairy tale moment that movies often portray. Instead, it was gradual, built on shared interests, late-night study sessions, and the kind of friendship that slowly blossoms into something deeper. William was drawn to Kate's authenticity. In a world where people often approached him with ulterior motives, she treated him as simply William, not the future king, not the son of Princess Diana, but as a young man trying to find his place in the world. Their relationship developed, quietly, away from the prying eyes of the media, in the safety of university life where they could be ordinary students. The early years of their relationship were marked by careful secrecy. Kate learned to navigate life under scrutiny, developing the poise that would later define her public presence. She watched how William handled the constant attention, how he balanced his royal duties with his desire for normalcy. During their brief breakup in 2007, Kate experienced what it meant to live in the spotlight without the protection of royal status. The media dubbed her Weighty Katie, questioning her worth and speculating about her future. But Kate used this difficult period to strengthen herself. She focused on her work, maintained her friendships, and refused to let public criticism define her worth. When she and William reunited, their relationship was stronger, built on a deeper understanding of what their life together would require. Kate had proven to herself and to the world that she could withstand the pressures that came with loving a prince. The proposal came during a private trip to Kenya in 2010. William presented her with his mother's engagement ring, a stunning sapphire, surrounded by diamonds that had once graced Princess Diana's finger. This gesture was deeply significant, connecting Kate not just to William, but to the legacy of the woman who had captured the world's heart. The ring represented continuity, hope, and the promise that love could triumph over the complexities of royal life. As their engagement was announced, Kate faced intensive preparation for her new role. She worked with palace staff to understand royal protocol, studied the history of the monarchy, and learned how to navigate the complex world of state functions and public appearances. Every gesture, every word, every smile would be analyzed and interpreted by millions of people around the world. The wedding preparations were elaborate beyond imagination. Every detail was scrutinized, from the choice of flowers to the guest list that included heads of state, celebrities, and members of royal families from around the world. Kate worked closely with designers to create a wedding dress that would honor tradition while reflecting her personal style. The dress, created by Sarah Burton at Alexander McQueen, was kept secret until the moment she stepped out of the car. The pressure was immense. This wedding would be watched by an estimated 2 billion people worldwide. Kate understood that she was not just marrying the man she loved, she was accepting a lifetime of service to the British people and the Commonwealth. Every public appearance would be analyzed, every fashion choice would influence trends, and every word she spoke would carry the weight of the crown. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Kate's transformation became even more apparent. She carried herself with increasing confidence. Her smile became more assured, and her interactions with the media showed a growing understanding of her role. She was no longer just Kate Middleton from Bucklebury. She was becoming Catherine, future queen consort. The night before the wedding, as Kate prepared for the biggest day of her life, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a university student sharing a flat with friends to a woman about to marry the future King of England, her life had changed in ways she could never have imagined. Yet at its heart, this was still a love story, the story of two young people who had found each other and chosen to face the world together. As the morning of April 29, 2011 dawned, Kate understood that when she walked into Westminster Abbey, she would be walking into history. The girl who had grown up in a village in Berkshire was about to become one of the most watched women in the world. The weight of this responsibility was balanced by the love she felt for William and her determination to serve with dignity and grace. The car began to slow as they approached the Abbey. Through the windows, Kate could see the ancient stones of the building where kings and queens had been crowned for nearly 1,000 years. Soon she would walk through those doors as Catherine Middleton for the last time. When she emerged, she would be Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cambridge, embarking on a journey that would define not just her own life, but potentially shape the future of the British monarchy itself. The moment had arrived. As the car door opened and Kate stepped onto the red carpet, the roar of the crowd filled the air, and history began to unfold. The ancient doors of Westminster Abbey seemed to hold their breath as Kate stepped from the Rolls-Royce onto the red carpet. The crowd's roar was deafening, but she moved with the grace that had been carefully cultivated over months of preparation. Her dress, a masterpiece of ivory silk satin and French Chantilly lace, flowed behind her like liquid moonlight. The 9-foot train, carried by her sister Pippa and young bridesmaids, created a river of elegance that seemed to float above the red carpet. Every step Kate took was measured, deliberate, and filled with purpose. The months of coaching had prepared her for this moment. How to walk with the heavy train, how to manage the delicate lace sleeves, how to maintain her composure under the intense scrutiny of millions of eyes. But nothing could have truly prepared her for the overwhelming emotion of actually living this moment. The Abbey's interior was breathtaking. Nearly 2,000 guests had gathered in the sacred space, their faces turning toward her as she appeared in the doorway. The morning light streamed through the medieval stained glass windows, casting colored patterns across the ancient stone floors. The smell of white roses and lily of the valley filled the air. Flowers chosen not just for their beauty, but for their symbolism of new beginnings and the return of happiness. As Kate began her slow procession down the aisle, she could see familiar faces among the distinguished guests. Her parents sat in the front row, their pride evident despite their attempts to maintain royal decorum. Michael Middleton's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he watched his daughter walk toward her destiny. Carol Middleton, elegant in sky blue, clutched her husband's hand, remembering the little girl who used to play dress-up and dream of fairy tales. The guest list read like a who's who of world leaders and celebrities. David and Victoria Beckham sat alongside Elton John and his partner David Furnish. Foreign royalty from across Europe had traveled to witness this historic moment. The Governor-General of Australia represented the Commonwealth realms, while Prime Ministers and presidents nodded respectfully as Kate passed. Each guest understood they were witnessing a moment that would be remembered for generations. But it was the presence of Queen Elizabeth II that added the most weight to the occasion. The monarch, dressed in bright yellow to ensure she would be visible to the crowds outside, watched her grandson's bride with careful assessment. This marriage would affect the future of the monarchy she had served for nearly 60 years. Kate's success in this role would help determine whether the royal family could maintain its relevance in the modern world. Prince Charles and Camilla sat with expressions of warm approval. Charles had grown fond of Kate during the years of her relationship with William, impressed by her steady demeanor and genuine affection for his son. He understood better than anyone the challenges that awaited her, having watched his first wife struggle with the pressures of royal life. The musical arrangements filled the Abbey with stirring melodies. The London Chamber Orchestra, combined with the Chapel Royal Choir and the choir of Westminster Abbey, created a sound that seemed to lift the very stones of the ancient building. The hymns chosen for the ceremony, "Guide Me, O Thou Great Redeemer," and "Love Divine, All Loves Excelling," reflected both tradition and the couple's personal faith. As Kate continued her walk, she caught glimpses of William's military friends from his service in the RAF. These young men represented the normal life that William had fought to maintain despite his royal status. Their presence reminded everyone that this was not just a state occasion, but the wedding of two people who had built genuine friendships and lived real experiences outside the palace walls. The bridesmaids created a charming procession behind. Kate, her sister Pippa, elegant in ivory satin with a cowl neckline, managed the train with practiced ease. The younger bridesmaids, including William's cousin Lady Louise Windsor and Kate's goddaughter Grace Van Cutsum, added an element of innocence and joy to the formal proceedings. Their presence represented the future, the next generation who would grow up in a world where Kate would be their queen. Halfway down the aisle, Kate's eyes finally found William. He stood at the altar in his red Irish Guards uniform, the gold, braiding, catching the light from the windows. His expression was one of pure joy mixed with nervous anticipation. For a moment, despite the grandeur surrounding them, it was just two people in love preparing to make a commitment that would last a lifetime. William's best man, his brother Prince Harry, stood beside him with a broad grin. Harry had been instrumental in helping William navigate the challenges of royal romance, often serving as a confidant and supporter during the difficult periods of their relationship. His presence at the altar symbolized not just fraternal support, but the continuity of the royal family's next generation. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. Rowan Williams, waited at the altar with a presence that commanded respect. His role in this ceremony went beyond the traditional. He was helping to sanctify a union that would affect the spiritual leadership of the Church of England. The vows that Kate and William would exchange would bind them not just to each other, but to a lifetime of service to their faith and their people. As Kate neared the altar, the symbolism of the moment became overwhelming. She was walking through the same abbey where Queen Elizabeth II had been crowned, where Princess Diana's funeral had been held, where centuries of British history had unfolded. With each step, she was literally walking into the pages of history, books that future generations would study. The train of her dress created a stunning visual as it spread across the altar steps. The intricate lacework told its own story. Roses, thistles, daffodils, and shamrocks represented the four nations of the United Kingdom, while the Carrick-Macross craftsmanship honored traditional British artisanship. Every element had been chosen to reflect both personal taste and national significance. The moment had arrived. As Kate reached William's side and their eyes met, the formal ceremony was about to begin. But the real transformation, from commoner to royal, from girlfriend to duchess, from private citizen to public servant, had already occurred during that remarkable walk down the aisle. The girl from Bucklebury had become the woman who would one day be queen, and the entire world had witnessed her graceful acceptance of that destiny. The moment Kate reached William's side at the altar, time seemed to slow. The deafening noise from outside the Abbey faded to a whisper, and the 2,000 guests seemed to disappear into the background. For just a heartbeat, it was only William and Kate, two people in love, standing before God and preparing to make the most important promise of their lives. William's face broke into the familiar smile that Kate had fallen in love with years ago at university. His eyes sparkled with joy and perhaps a hint of nervous laughter. He whispered something that made Kate smile, a private joke between them that reminded her that beneath all the ceremony and grandeur, this was still the man who made her laugh during their quiet moments together. Archbishop Rowan Williams stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of tradition as he began the ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness and bless the joining together of this man and this woman in holy matrimony. His words echoed through the ancient stones, reaching every corner of the Abbey and carrying beyond to the millions watching around the world. The traditional Anglican service unfolded with careful precision. Each word had been spoken countless times before in this same space, connecting William and Kate to generations of couples who had made similar promises. Yet, there was something uniquely modern about their ceremony. The way Kate looked directly into William's eyes, the confidence in her voice, the sense that she was choosing this life with full understanding of what it would mean. When the moment came for the vows, Kate's voice was clear and strong. I, Catherine Elizabeth, take you, William Arthur Philip Lewis, to be my wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness, and in health to love and to cherish, till death us do part, according to God's holy ordinance. And thereto I give you my troth. These words, spoken by countless brides before her, took on special significance coming from Kate. She was promising not just to love William, but to accept everything that came with being his wife, the scrutiny, the duty, the sacrifice of privacy, and the weight of representing the crown. Her clear, unwavering delivery showed that she understood exactly what she was promising. William's vows were equally powerful. His voice, though slightly nervous, carried the sincerity of a man who had thought deeply about this commitment. When he promised to love and cherish Kate, he was also promising to protect her from the pressures that had overwhelmed his mother. His vows were both traditional and deeply personal. The exchange of rings created one of the most touching moments of the ceremony. William's wedding ring was made from Welsh gold, continuing a royal tradition that dated back to 1923. But it was Kate's ring that captured the world's attention, not just because it had belonged to Princess Diana, but because of the way William placed it on her finger with such gentle reverence. The ring represented so much more than jewelry. It was a connection to Diana's memory, a promise that Kate would honor the legacy of the people's princess while creating her own unique role. Diana's presence seemed to hover over the ceremony, not as a shadow, but as a blessing, the mother-in-law Kate would never meet but whose example would guide her path. As the Archbishop pronounced them husband and wife, the tension that had built throughout the ceremony finally released. William and Kate turned to face their guests as the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, their faces radiant with joy and relief. The congregation erupted in applause, breaking with traditional Anglican reserve in a moment of pure celebration. The signing of the register took place in the private chapel of Edward the Confessor, away from the public eye. This intimate moment allowed the immediate families to share congratulations and emotions that had been carefully controlled during the public ceremony. Kate's parents embraced their new son-in-law, while Queen Elizabeth offered her grandson and his bride warm congratulations. The musical celebration that followed was magnificent. The choir's voices soared through the Abbey as they performed "This Is the Day" by John Rutter, a piece specially commissioned for the occasion. The music seemed to lift everyone present, creating a sense of national celebration that extended far beyond the Abbey walls. As Kate and William prepared to leave the Abbey, they paused for a moment at the entrance. Through the open doors, they could see the massive crowd gathered outside, thousands of people who had traveled from around the world to witness this historic moment. The cheering was so loud it seemed to shake the ancient stones of the building. the couple's first public appearance as husband and wife was electrifying. Kate's confidence was remarkable. She waved to the crowd with natural grace, her smile genuine and warm. She had transformed completely from the nervous university student who had once hidden from photographers. Now she stood beside William as an equal partner, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The carriage ride back to Buckingham Palace was a triumph. The 1902 state landau, drawn by 4 horses, carried them through streets lined with cheering crowds. Kate sat beside William with perfect posture, acknowledging the crowds with waves and smiles that seemed to energize everyone who saw her. The joy on her face was infectious, spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Television commentators struggled to find words to describe the transformation they were witnessing. This was not just a wedding, it was the birth of a new royal icon. Kate's poise, her evident happiness, and her natural connection with the crowds suggested that the monarchy had found its new star. The journey to the palace took them past some of London's most famous landmarks. As they traveled down the Mall, with its ceremonial flags fluttering in the breeze, Kate could see Buckingham Palace growing larger ahead of them. Soon she would step onto the famous balcony where generations of royals had greeted their subjects, where she would make her first public appearance as a member of the royal family. The crowds pressed against the barriers, desperate to catch a glimpse of the new Duchess. Children waved flags, elderly women wiped away tears, and young couples held each other close, inspired by the love story they had just witnessed. Kate waved back to all of them, understanding that these people were now, in a very real sense, her people. As the carriage approached the palace gates, Kate squeezed William's hand. The ceremony was over, but their new life together was just beginning. Soon they would step onto that balcony to acknowledge the crowds. And then the real work of being royal would begin. The golden gates of Buckingham Palace swung open as the state landau approached, carrying the newly married Duke and Duchess of Cambridge toward their destiny. Kate felt her heart racing as the palace grew larger, its familiar facade now representing not just the monarchy, but her new home and headquarters for a lifetime of service. The roar of the crowd outside the palace was deafening. Thousands of people had gathered in the hope of seeing the couple appear on the famous balcony. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Staff members who had served, the royal family for decades prepared for one of the most significant balcony appearances in recent memory. The Queen's private secretary coordinated with palace guards to ensure perfect timing, while photographers positioned themselves to capture the moment that would be replayed countless times in history books. Kate stepped down from the carriage. With newfound confidence, her dress train flowing behind her like a river of silk. William offered his arm, and together they walked through the palace doors as husband and wife. The transformation was complete. The middle-class girl from Berkshire had become Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cambridge, one of the most photographed and scrutinized women in the world. The moments before stepping onto the balcony were filled with nervous excitement. Kate could hear the crowd outside chanting, "We want Kate! We want William!" The sound was overwhelming, representing the hopes and expectations of an entire nation. Through the palace windows, she could see the sea of people stretching down the Mall, Union Jack flags waving like colorful waves in an ocean of celebration. Queen Elizabeth approached her new granddaughter-in-law with a warm smile. "Are you ready, my dear?" she asked gently. The Queen's presence was both reassuring and daunting. This woman had been on royal balconies for over 70 years, had weathered countless storms of public opinion, and had maintained the dignity of the crown through decades of change. Her approval meant everything. Prince Philip, despite his advanced age, stood ready to join the balcony appearance. His sharp wit and decades of experience had taught him exactly how to work a crowd. And his presence would add gravitas to the moment. Charles and Camilla waited nearby, their faces showing pride and perhaps a touch of relief that the wedding had proceeded flawlessly. The younger royals added energy to the group. Prince Harry's infectious grin reminded everyone that this was, at its heart, a celebration of love and family. The young bridesmaids and page boys, still excited from their role in the ceremony, added an element of spontaneous joy that would delight the waiting crowds. As the balcony doors prepared to open, Kate took a deep breath. Everything she had learned during her years of preparation would be tested in the next few minutes. The way she waved, smiled, and interacted with the crowd would be analyzed by royal watchers around the world. More importantly, her first balcony appearance would set the tone for her entire royal career. The doors opened, and the sound hit them like a physical force. The cheering was so loud that Kate momentarily stepped back, overwhelmed by the intensity of public affection. But William's steady presence beside her gave her confidence, and together they stepped forward onto the red-carpeted balcony. The sight that greeted them was breathtaking. The mall stretched out below them, packed with people as far as the eye could see. British flags mixed with flags from Commonwealth countries, creating a tapestry of color and celebration. People had climbed trees, stood on monuments, and pressed against barriers for hours just to catch a glimpse of this moment. Kate's first wave to the crowd was tentative, almost shy. But as the cheering intensified, her confidence grew. She began to wave with more enthusiasm, her smile becoming radiant as she realized the genuine affection the people were showing her. This was not just protocol. These people truly wanted to celebrate with her and William. The Queen stepped forward first, acknowledging the crowd with the precise, measured wave she had perfected over decades. The crowd's response was respectful and warm, showing their deep affection for their long-serving monarch. When William and Kate moved to the front of the balcony, however, the noise became deafening. "Kiss! Kiss!" the crowd began to chant, and Kate felt her cheeks flush. Royal balcony kisses were rare, and she wasn't sure of the protocol. William looked at her with amusement and love, then leaned in for a brief, sweet kiss that sent the crowd into absolute raptures. The image of that kiss would become one of the most iconic photographs of the 21st century. But the crowd wanted more, and William obliged with a second kiss, this one even more enthusiastic. Kate's laughter was genuine and infectious, and in that moment, any remaining nervousness disappeared. She was no longer performing a role. She was genuinely enjoying sharing this moment of joy with the British people. The other members of the royal family joined them on the balcony, creating a tableau that represented both tradition and the future of the monarchy. The Queen's presence provided stability and continuity, while William and Kate represented hope and renewal. The mix of generations showed a family institution that could adapt and evolve while maintaining its essential character. Prince Harry's playful interaction with the young bridesmaids delighted the crowd and provided some of the day's most charming moments. His easy rapport with children and his obvious joy at his brother's happiness made him a crowd favorite. The children themselves, overwhelmed by the noise and spectacle, provided moments of spontaneous authenticity that no amount of planning could have created. As the royal family waved to the crowd, Kate observed how each member had their own style of public engagement. The Queen's wave was dignified and measured. Charles's was warm but formal, and Harry's was energetic and playful. Kate began to develop her own approach, warm, genuine, and connected, but with the grace and dignity appropriate to her new position. The balcony appearance lasted about 10 minutes, but it felt both eternal and instantaneous. Kate tried to take in every detail, the faces in the crowd, the feeling of William's hand in hers, the overwhelming sense of being part of something much larger than herself. This moment was being broadcast live to billions of people around the world, but for Kate, it felt intensely personal. As they prepared to go back inside, Kate took one final look at the crowd. These people had welcomed her with open arms, accepting her as their future queen based on nothing more than her love for William and her evident sincerity. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the support and affection she felt from the people she would serve. The transition from the balcony back into the palace was jarring. Outside, there had been noise, energy, and celebration. Inside, there was suddenly relative quiet and the need to prepare for the wedding reception. Kate's dress required careful management as she navigated the palace corridors, but her spirits were soaring from the success of her first major public appearance as a royal. The wedding breakfast that followed was intimate compared to the morning's spectacle, but no less significant. Queen Elizabeth gave a speech welcoming Kate to the family, and Prince Charles spoke movingly about his son's happiness and his confidence in Kate's future role. These private moments of family acceptance meant as much to Kate as the public celebration had. The wedding breakfast at Buckingham Palace was an intimate affair compared to the morning's grand spectacle, but for Kate, it held equal significance. As she sat beside William at the head table, she was surrounded by the people who mattered. Most, family members who had watched her journey from university student to duchess, friends who had supported her through the challenges of royal courtship, and dignitaries who would shape her future role as a working royal. The state dining room, with its magnificent chandeliers and portraits of long-dead monarchs looking down from gilded frames, provided an elegant backdrop for the celebration. Kate's wedding dress, though stunning, was beginning to feel heavy after hours of wear, but her spirits remained light as she observed the subtle dynamics of royal family interaction during this private moment. Queen Elizabeth, seated in the place of honor, watched her new granddaughter-in-law with keen interest. The monarch had seen many family celebrations over her long reign, but this one felt particularly significant. Kate's composure throughout the day had impressed her, and the public's enthusiastic response suggested that the monarchy had gained a valuable new asset. The Queen's toast to the couple was brief but warm, welcoming Kate to our family with genuine affection. Prince Philip, despite his reputation for sharp comments, was charming and avuncular with Kate. His decades of experience as a royal consort gave him unique insight into the challenges she would face, and his quiet words of encouragement meant more to her than he might have realized. "You handled that balcony business very well," he told her with a slight smile. "The secret is to remember that they want to love you. Your job is simply not to disappoint them." The conversation flowed around topics both personal and political. Foreign dignitaries shared their impressions of the ceremony, while family members recounted favorite moments from the day. Kate found herself naturally engaging with everyone, her years of preparation evident in her ability to discuss everything from Commonwealth relations to childhood memories with equal grace. Charles's speech, as father of the groom, was particularly moving. He spoke about watching William grow from a boy who had endured unimaginable loss into a man ready to serve his country and his family. He praised Kate's patience, strength, and genuine love for his son, expressing confidence that she would bring fresh energy to the royal family while respecting its traditions. The wedding cake, created by Fiona Cairns, was a masterpiece of 8 tiers decorated with cream and white icing flowers. Each bloom had been individually crafted, creating a cake that was as much art as dessert. When William and Kate cut the cake together, using William's ceremonial sword from his military service, the photographers captured another iconic moment, the couple laughing together as they managed the unwieldy blade. As the afternoon progressed, Kate began to understand the rhythm of royal life. There were formal moments that required perfect protocol, but also natural interactions that revealed the very human side of this extraordinary family. Harry's best man speech was legendary for its humor and affection, including embarrassing stories about William that had everyone, including the Queen, laughing heartily. The presents received by the couple were extraordinary in their range and value. Foreign governments had sent priceless artifacts, while ordinary citizens had crafted handmade gifts that touched Kate's heart. Each present represented a relationship that she and William would need to nurture, from heads of state to school children who had sent drawings of the happy couple. As the formal breakfast concluded, Kate prepared for her first major transition, as a royal, changing from her wedding dress into her going-away outfit. The process required the assistance of several dressers and careful preservation of the gown that would likely be displayed in exhibitions for years to come. The blue dress she chose for the afternoon was elegant, but more practical, suitable for the less formal celebrations that would follow. The private reception that evening was more relaxed, allowing Kate to interact with younger members of the wedding party and close friends who had been with her throughout her relationship with William. These were the people who had seen her struggle with public scrutiny, who had provided support during difficult periods, and who genuinely celebrated her happiness rather than her newfound status. Dancing with William was a moment of pure joy for Kate. After a day of careful protocol and public scrutiny, moving together to music allowed them to reconnect as a couple rather than as public figures. Their first dance was watched by family and friends who had witnessed their love story unfold over nearly a decade. The evening also provided Kate's first experience of the subtle art of royal diplomacy. Conversations with foreign guests required her to be informed about international relations while remaining politically neutral. She discovered that every interaction, no matter how casual it seemed, carried potential implications for Britain's relationships with other nations. As the celebration continued into the night, Kate reflected on the magnitude of the day's events. She had begun the morning as Catherine Middleton and would go to bed as the Duchess of Cambridge. More than a change of title, this represented a fundamental shift in her life's purpose and possibilities. Every decision she made going forward would be viewed through the lens of her royal role. The media coverage of the wedding was already being analyzed by palace staff. Early reports were overwhelmingly positive, praising Kate's grace under pressure and the genuine affection she had shown toward the public. Her fashion choices were being dissected and copied, her every gesture studied for clues about her personality and future approach to royal duties. Late in the evening, as the last guests departed and the palace began to quiet down, Kate had a moment alone with William. They stood together in one of the palace's private sitting rooms, still hardly believing that the day they had planned for so long had actually happened. The magnitude of what lay ahead, years of public service, the probability of becoming king, and queen, the responsibility of representing Britain around the world, seemed both thrilling and daunting. "No regrets?" William asked her softly, and Kate's answer came without hesitation. The journey that had brought her to this palace, to this family, to this extraordinary life had been challenging, but every step had led her to this moment of perfect happiness and infinite possibility. The day that had begun with nervous anticipation in a hotel room was ending with confident joy in Buckingham Palace. Kate had not just married the man she loved. She had successfully launched her royal career with a performance that exceeded everyone's expectations, including her own. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight was for celebration and the quiet satisfaction of a day perfectly lived. The following days brought a new reality that Kate had prepared for but could never have fully understood until she lived it. Waking up as the Duchess of Cambridge meant waking up to a world where her every move would be documented, analyzed, and interpreted by millions of people around the globe. The wedding had been just the beginning. Now came the real work of building a royal life that honored tradition while remaining authentic to who she was. The honeymoon in the Seychelles provided a brief respite from public scrutiny, but even there, Kate began planning her future role. She and William discussed the causes they wanted to champion, the kind of royal couple they hoped to become, and how they would balance their private happiness with their public duties. These conversations, held on tropical beaches far from the pressures of London, would shape the next decade of their lives. Returning to Britain meant facing the reality of constant public interest. Kate's fashion choices became international news, with her outfits selling out within hours of her appearance. The Kate effect on British fashion and retail was immediate and substantial. But more importantly, her approach to royal engagements began to establish her unique style within the monarchy. Her first solo royal engagement was carefully chosen, a visit to a children's hospice that reflected her growing interest in early childhood development and her natural warmth with young people. The way she interacted with seriously ill children and their families showed a genuine compassion that couldn't be manufactured or coached. These early appearances established Kate as someone who brought both dignity and authenticity to her royal role. The pressures of royal life began to reveal themselves gradually. Every public appearance required extensive briefings, careful wardrobe planning, and flawless execution. Kate discovered that even the most spontaneous-seeming moments were carefully orchestrated, with palace staff anticipating every possible scenario and preparing appropriate responses. The transition from private citizen to public figure was more complex than she had anticipated. Simple activities like grocery shopping or meeting friends for coffee became logistical challenges requiring security arrangements and media management. Kate learned to appreciate the small moments of normalcy that William had fought to preserve during their courtship. Quiet evenings at home, private dinners with friends, and family gatherings away from public view. Her relationship with the media evolved during these early months. The same photographers who had once pursued her relentlessly now documented her official engagements with professional courtesy. Kate learned to work with the press rather than against them, understanding that positive media coverage was essential for the monarchy's continued relevance and public support. The learning curve was steep but manageable. Kate threw herself into understanding the constitutional role of the monarchy, studying British history and the delicate balance between tradition and modernization that successful royals had to maintain. She worked with private secretaries who had served the royal family for decades, absorbing their knowledge while bringing her own perspective to traditional practices. Her first major international tour to Canada and the United States was a crucial test of her ability to represent Britain on the world stage. The tour's success exceeded all expectations, with Kate's natural charm and William's practiced diplomacy creating a powerful partnership that strengthened Britain's relationships with key allies. The images of Kate engaging with Canadian families and American dignitaries showed a future queen who could connect across cultures while maintaining royal dignity. The couple's move to Wales, where William served as a search and rescue pilot, provided Kate with her first real experience of provincial, royal life. Living in a cottage on Anglesey allowed them to experience something approaching normal married life, though even there, Kate's presence transformed the quiet island community into a focus of international attention. During this period, Kate began developing the causes that would define her royal career. Her interest in early childhood development grew from her own experiences and her observations of how crucial the early years were in shaping human potential. She visited schools, nurseries, and family support centers, learning from experts and beginning to understand how her platform could make a real difference. The first pregnancy announcement came with both joy and renewed pressure. Kate's experience with severe morning sickness during her pregnancy with George was her first real test of managing personal challenges under intense public scrutiny. The way she handled this difficult period, maintaining her royal duties while dealing with a debilitating condition, showed the resilience that would characterize her approach to royal life. The birth of Prince George marked another transformation in Kate's role. She was no longer just the Duchess of Cambridge. She was now the mother of a future king. The responsibility of raising a child who would one day rule was daunting, but Kate approached it with the same careful preparation she had brought to every other aspect of her royal role. Her post-pregnancy appearances were scrutinized intensely, with every aspect of her recovery analyzed by the media. Kate's decision to appear publicly soon after giving birth, looking polished and confident despite the physical and emotional challenges of new motherhood, set a new standard for royal mothers and sparked important conversations about the pressures faced by women in the public eye. The christening of Prince George, held at the Chapel Royal at St. James's Palace, provided Kate with another opportunity to demonstrate her growing confidence in her royal role. Her choice of outfit, her interaction with family members, and her obvious joy in her new son created images that would define public perception of the modern royal family. As the years passed, Kate's role continued to evolve. The births of Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis expanded her family and her understanding of the challenges facing modern parents. Her royal engagements increasingly focused on issues affecting families and children, from mental health initiatives to outdoor education programs. The death of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022 marked the most significant transition in Kate's royal career. As the wife of the heir apparent, she became the Princess of Wales, inheriting a title that carried enormous historical weight and public expectation. The way she handled this transition, honoring the memory of Diana while establishing her own approach to the role, demonstrated the maturity and wisdom she had developed over more than a decade of royal service. Today, as Kate looks back on that transformative day at Westminster Abbey, she can see how every moment of preparation, every challenge overcome, and every lesson learned contributed to her development as a royal figure who commands both respect and affection. The girl who walked into the Abbey with nervous determination had become a woman who represents the modern monarchy with confidence, compassion, and unwavering dedication to service. The wedding day that seemed like the culmination of a fairy tale was actually just the beginning of a remarkable journey. Kate's transformation from commoner to future queen was not completed in a single day of ceremony and celebration. It was achieved through years of careful work, genuine commitment, and the gradual earning of public trust and affection. The IA presence that stilled the crowd that April morning had grown from inner strength, careful preparation, and absolute dedication to the role she had chosen to embrace.